We're going to look at the rules for the Fortress of the Archkyrie today. This was the first castle expansion released for Heroscape, and it introduced walls, battlements, a fortress door, ladders, and a flag. So let's take a look at the rules. I'm going to skip over the assembly instructions because those aren't rules for the game. So we'll jump straight into the rules, and this is going to start off with the fortress wall rules as well as moving along fortress walls. I will go over some rules placement for walls. So when building fortress walls, follow these rules. Each wall section must sit on a base or another wall section, because they do stack like that. Each wall section must have a wall walk or another wall section on top of it. Now, a lot of the competitive designed maps on fan websites, they remove these because they have a tendency to be safe spots for flyers with range, and there's no way for a melee unit to get up there and attack them. So this rule is often disregarded when building a competitive style map, as there's no real easy way without ladders or other things that are viewed as too complicated. But when placing according to the rules, you have to have a wall walk or another wall section on top of this, no weird peg. And fortress walls may not sit on water tiles or other tiles that are considered to have no height. When counting levels for a fortress wall, you'll count the base as 1. So right here, this first line here is just 1. And then every solid line on the way up is another level. So this is 1, 2, on top of this one would be 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Let's take a look at moving on wall walk tiles. Wall walk tiles create spaces that may allow your figures to travel more quickly than normal. Figures may move on and occupy all wall walk spaces similar to other normal terrain spaces such as rock, grass, or sand. When moving your figures on wall walk spaces, count each space as a normal space. However, if your figure's entire move consists of wall walk spaces, including the starting space, your figure receives a bonus and you may add 3 to your figure's move. The 3 additional spaces must also be on wall walk spaces. Figures cannot use ladders with the wall walk bonus. We'll get to ladders in a little bit. But here's an example of a figure moving across a wall walk. We'll use our Tarn Viking warrior, who has a base movement of 4, and he'll end his movement on a wall walk, so that would give him plus 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and he gets there. When a figure moves from one wall walk to a higher level, the figure must add the differences in height to the movement, similar to moving up rule in the Master Game Guide. When moving down to a lower wall walk space, you do not need to count the difference in levels unless the level is equal to or more than the height of the figure. And we'd go back to the rule for falling. And the rule for falling, as explained in the Master Game Guide, is if the height is higher than the height of the figure, which in this case the Tarn Viking warrior is a medium 5. So if it's higher than 5 that he would move down, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he would take a falling damage roll, which there's no defense rolled against this. You just roll one of these dice on a skull, the figure would receive a wound. Now, in a major fall, that would be if the jump down was higher than 10 levels from the figure's height, which this is 18, 19, 20. So this is exactly 20 levels, which is 15 levels higher than his height. So he would take major fall damage, which would be 2 attack dice. And now our little Tarn Viking warrior is going to demonstrate extreme fall damage. This is 29 levels high. So if he decides to jump down there, which is 24 levels higher than his height, that constitutes for extreme falling damage, which is when you roll a 20-sided die, and on a roll of 1 to 18, your figure is destroyed. So he makes his move and goes to water, which, when you land in water, you do not have to roll for fall damage, no matter the height. You can also use wall walk tiles as road tiles. When the wall walks are not supported by fortress walls, you can link and stack them the same way you link and stack other terrain tiles such as grass, sand, rock, etc. The wall walks then become simple road tiles on your battlefield, and road tiles were introduced in the Road to the Forgotten Forest expansion, and they have almost exact rules as wall walks, except just not being part of fortress walls, which is, when moving your figures on road spaces, count each space as a normal space. However, if your figure's entire move consists of road spaces, including the starting space, you may add an additional 3 spaces to your figure's move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we're going to discuss battlements. Battlements are structures that may be added to wall walks or other hex-shaped tiles such as grass, rock, sand, etc. Battlements offer valuable protection during battles by providing figures with obstacles to hide behind. Moving over battlements. Figures may move over battlements, count the lowest part of the battlement as spaces in addition to any difference in levels that may need to be counted during the figure's movement. The height from the inside of a battlement, the side connected to the tile, is 2. The height from the outside of the battlement, the side not connected to the tile, is 3. Here's some examples. Our member of the Izumi Samurai Squad is going to make his move, and he has a base movement of 6. 1, 2, 3, inside of the wall, 4, 5, 6. And now, from moving this direction, you will add this tile here onto the height of the 3 on the outside of the wall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to go over engagement rules. Figures adhere to the same engagement rules as described in the Master Game Guide, which are: a figure becomes engaged when it moves adjacent to an opponent's figure. Adjacent exceptions. Most of the time, if a figure is next to another figure, they are adjacent. There are exceptions to the rule, such as if one figure's base is on a level 2 equal or higher than the height of the other figure, they are not adjacent and therefore not engaged. So, using battlements, if 2 figures are on adjacent spaces separated by a battlement, both figures' heights must be higher than the lowest part of the battlement to be considered adjacent or engaged. So, if the Morrow Warrior moved up to here and Agent Carr moved up to here, we'll be adding this extra level down here to the battlements. So the outside part of the battlement has a height of 3, remember. Plus the extra level below it for a total height of 4 now, 3 plus 1. Agent Carr has a height of 5 on his army card, so he is adjacent and engaged to the Tarn Viking Warrior. The Morrow Warrior, however, only has a height of 4, so the 3 plus 1 means that it is not adjacent to or engaged with the Tarn Viking Warrior in this instance. Line of sight. Battlement points may be used as target points. Battlement points on the corners of battlements are used only for range attacks. They are used for line of sight only when attacking from the inside of a battlement. A figure next to the battlement point may use this point instead of his or her target point. It is the equivalent of leaning over the battlement to target an opponent. To use the battlement point, choose a battlement point that is next to the space your figure is on, then target your opponent by lining up the battlement point at the outside edge of the battlement to your target. If there is a clear line of sight, you may use this as a ranged attack point. Figures with special powers that reference clear sight spaces, like Raylan the Kyrie Warrior, may also use the line of sight mark in addition to their target point to determine whom their special powers affect. Let's look at an example. Using his normal target sight, the green dot on his army card, Savaris would not be able to make a straight line down to these Shaolin monks. However, switching to the point of the battlement view, using these corners, Savaris could indeed draw a line from this corner down to this monk, this corner here down to this monk, and this corner down to this monk. So using these target points instead of his normal target point on his army card, he is able to make an attack on all 3 of those monks. Use these points when standing inside a battlement for abilities that require a clear line of sight. The doorway. The doorway allows figures to enter and exit a fortress. Attached to the doorway is a movable door that may be opened and closed. Figures cannot see or target other figures through the doorway when the door is closed. The doorway may be placed anywhere on the battlefield as long as the doorway and all of the doorway spaces, which we will show here in a second, are all the same level. When building battlefields, keep the doorway spaces, which are 4 hexes behind it, clear of any obstacles such as ruins or trees. Only figures are allowed to occupy the 4 doorway spaces. The example here on the inside of the doorway is the 4 doorway spaces. You have 1, 2, 3, and then where this tarn is standing is 4. And that is the door can swing inward. The fortress door is a destructible object that may be opened and closed unless specified differently at the beginning of a scenario. The door starts every game on the closed position. The scenario will also specify who has control of the door and the door card. Control of the door is managed by any player who controls the door card. This player rolls defense dice when the door is attacked. The controlling player loses control of the door when a new player occupies door space number 4, which I've made a sand tile for this example. The door card, along with any wound markers, are immediately taken over by the new controlling player. Rules for opening and closing the door. As long as a controlling player's figure occupies the doorway space, number 4 in the doorway spaces, the controlling player may open or close the door whenever needed. Which I'd have to take this whole bar out just to show you a door opening. So yeah, there you go, there's that. If a figure moves from the space or is destroyed, then the space remains unoccupied. The door cannot be opened or closed. When the door is closed, it must be completely closed to occupy the space, doorway space number 1. When closed, it is considered barred from the inside and may not be opened from the outside by enemy figures. When the door is open, it must be opened completely to occupy space 3. So, when it is open, it must be, oh man, all the way in space 3, right there. Only those figures that can fit and move through space 1 are allowed to move and pass through the doorway. The door may be opened or closed by controlling player for his or her own figures and for other figures that may want to pass through. The controlling player may open or close the door even when it is not his or her turn. When opening or closing the door, all spaces, 1, 2, and 3 of the door spaces must be unoccupied. If there is a figure on these spaces, the door may not be opened or closed. So, nope, that's against rules. Can't open the door. There's a monk in the way. In this example, a Tarn Viking is on doorway space number 4, therefore has control of the fortress door, and he's going to open it here to allow this Knight of Weston to enter. 1, 2, 3, 4 movement. Targeting the door. Instead of choosing a figure to attack, players may target the destructible object. Destructible objects may be targeted and attacked much the same way a figure is targeted and attacked. The door's defense against attacks is described on its army card. To target the door, use the hex-shaped tile space that is below the door to determine adjacency in engagement and range. In this first example here, Deathwalker 8000 has a range of 7. His line of sight to the fortress door is perfect, so he may attack with a ranged attack using the spaces counted out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it is within range and able to be targeted. Attacking and defending. The door may be attacked by a normal attack, a special attack, or by special powers that only cause wounds. Add height advantage where appropriate. The door may receive wounds the same way that a figure may receive wounds. The door cannot be targeted or attacked by special powers that may destroy it in one attack. Example here, the 2 Shaolin monks are adjacent to the doorway in the doorway space number 1, the space the door currently occupies. So they may attack the door. Each figure attacks separately. The door is allowed 4 defense dice, as that is what it's on its armory card, and any reinforced defense as specified on the door card. When rolling defense dice against a normal attack from a small or medium figure, add 2 automatic shields to whatever is rolled. When rolling defense dice against a normal attack from large and huge figures, 1 automatic shield is rolled. So, these monks already have an uphill battle. Any skulls not blocked by shields count as wounds. In this case, the fortress door has 10 life. Place the appropriate amount of wound markers on the door card. Destroying the door. The door has 10 life. If the door receives 10 wounds, the door is destroyed. Remove the destroyed door, which actually comes in, comes off the hinges. And now we get to ladders. Ladders may be used only by small or medium single-based figures to allow them to move onto spaces on walls and terrain. Each ladder may consist of one or more single-rung ladder pieces. Building a ladder. Build a ladder by combining one or more single-rung ladder pieces, stacking them together, one on top of the other, and linking them to a wall walk, fortress wall, or other hex-shaped tiles. Only one ladder may be built on a hex-shaped tile space, such as grass, rock, sand, etc. This space is called the landing space. The bottom single-rung ladder piece must always be placed directly on the landing space. Landing spaces cannot be water spaces or other similar spaces considered to have no height. Ladders must always be linked into the side of a wall walk, fortress, or other hex-shaped tiles. The single-rung ladder piece at the top of every ladder must always be connected to a wall walk, single fortress wall, or hex-shaped tile. In this example here, you can just see these two little ladders stacked together will reach the top of this 4-height hex shape. Here is an example of correct and incorrect ladder placement. This first one is correct. The single-rung ladder piece is at the top of the ladder, is connected to the wall walk tile, and the bottom rung is placed on its landing space. This is incorrect. The ladder is not correctly linked to the side of the wall walk at the top. This is also incorrect. The bottom rung of this ladder is not placed directly on its landing space. Movement on ladders. Figures may move onto a ladder by moving onto a rung space. That is this little flat part beneath this little clip. Counting the move to this rung as if it were a hex-shaped tile space. To end a figure's move on a ladder, slide its base into a rung. Treat each figure on a rung as if it were on a hex-shaped tile space. All rules for normal movement on hex-shaped tile spaces apply to figures on ladders except the following. When moving up or down, each rung counts as one space. Do not count the levels. Figures are not allowed to skip rungs unless they fall off a ladder. Figures are not allowed to fall from any space onto a ladder rung. Figures must count levels, not rungs, when falling off a ladder to determine falling damage. Move on and off ladders as shown in these examples. First, moving on to a ladder from a landing space, we'll use this Venok Viper who has a movement of 7. You'd go from the landing space to this first rung. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Moving off a ladder space onto the landing space would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Moving onto a ladder space, you count the landing space. 1, 2, 3, 4 for this Knight of Weston. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he actually can't make it up the ladder, so he stops on the ladder. Moving down the ladder, you move off of it and count the landing space as well, using this Morrow Warrior who has a movement of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ladder rungs are a different height than hex tile spaces. So, moving on to a ladder when the rung is on a same level hex space, using Sergeant Drake here with a movement of 5, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he would stop up there on the ladder. Now adding another hex tile would offset the rungs. So moving on to the ladder from a different hex tile space is similar, but you just count the nearest rung as a movement, using again Sergeant Drake Alexander with his movement of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he can actually get a little bit higher up on the ladder. Moving off of a ladder onto a hex tile space. Moving off of a ladder onto a same hex level space using this Tarn with a movement of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in this same Tarn Viking Warrior example, moving off a ladder onto a different level hex tile space, you would just count down 1, 2, 3, then skipping that last rung, go 4. Moving from one ladder to another ladder. Moving from one ladder to a same level ladder would just be a straight over 1, 2, 3, 4 for this Tarn Viking warrior. Here's moving from one ladder to a different level ladder. The rungs are a little offset, so you just go up to the nearest highest one, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Still gets to the top. Moving from one ladder to another ladder. Again, if you are to imagine this ladder stuff, looking down directly at it, this ladder is a hex. So, when moving across, it's simple as making just a simple move. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the Tarn rests at the top of the ladder. Moving from one ladder to a different level ladder, again, same principle. Mentally, you look at it as if it's straight down and it's just 2 hexes. But you'd go to the nearest rung up as a single move. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, the Tarn only gets to the top rung of the ladder. Special movement and ladders. Figures that fly, leap, jump, or have similar movement over spaces may move from rung to rung, ladder to ladder, or on and off a ladder, counting only the spaces on the battlefield as they would during their normal movement. For example, Raylan with flying, 6 spaces ahead of her will land on the rung of another ladder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the landing space here she chooses to go on, we'll say that rung. Although looking back at this, if Raylan has flying and can do things like that, wouldn't it just be simpler to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and land safely up here? Let's use a bit of a more complicated example here than flying. Stealth leap. The Shaolin monks have this ability. Instead of their normal move, any or all Shaolin monks may stealth leap. Stealth leap has a move of 3. When counting spaces for a monk's leaping movement, ignore elevations. A monk may leap over water without stopping, pass over figures without becoming engaged, and leap over obstacles such as ruins. A monk may not leap more than 12 levels up or down in a single leap. If a monk is engaged when he starts to leap, he does not take any leaving engagement attacks. So, you can actually leap from ladder to ladder. We'll use the stealth movement of 3 off the ladder because this is our landing space. It's considered this ladder. 1, 2, and then going to this landing space, the monk will go to this rung here. 3. Moving around ladders. This Izumi samurai must move around the ladder to use it or occupy the landing spaces. Figures may not move through ladders. So with its movement of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It actually stops up here on this rung. And again, revisiting the rules of engagement, we're going to apply those to ladders. Engagement on ladders, you would just treat each figure on a rung as if it were on a hex-shaped tile space. Again, the easiest way to remember that is ladder is on a space. Just a straight down view. All rules for being adjacent or engaged on a hex-shaped tile apply to the figures on ladders. So, Agent Carr with his height of 5 is considered adjacent and engaged to this knight because the knight is not 5 or more levels higher than Carr. In this example here, the figures are not engaged. The knight is not adjacent to and therefore not engaged with Agent Carr because the knight is equal to or higher than the height of Agent Carr. With a height of 5, again, you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The solid line would mean that he's out of range. If 2 figures are on the same ladder, the 2 figures are engaged if neither figure can move closer on the ladder to the other. So in this example here, Agent Carr and the Tarn Viking are adjacent and engaged on this ladder because neither figure can move closer to the other. In this example here, Agent Carr and the Tarn Viking warrior are not adjacent or engaged on this ladder because both figures could move closer to each other. In this example here, the landing space and ladder engagement are a little bit different. If a figure on a landing space can move on to the first rung, and the figure above cannot move closer to the figure on the landing space, both figures are considered adjacent and engaged, because the monk could safely move to this rung, but the knight cannot go any lower. And the Shaolin monk would also still be adjacent here on the first rung, because both figures on the ladder cannot move closer to each other, so thus they are engaged. Here's engagement between figures on different ladders. The Tarn Viking warrior is 4 levels below Agent Carr on the ladder. Because the Tarn Viking warrior has a height of 5, they are engaged. And how do you know that that's 4 height? Again, just a reminder that you can count the hex tiles outside the ladder or the solid lines on the ladder. So lining up Carr's base is 1, 2, 3, 4, which lines up with the Tarn's base. So they are engaged and adjacent. Now moving him down just 1 rung constitutes about 2 levels. So now the Tarn is 6 levels below Carr, which means they are not adjacent and engaged, because the Tarn Viking warrior's height is 5, and Carr is equal to or greater than 5 height away from this Tarn. They are not adjacent and they are not engaged. Here we're going to show the example of using a figure's base as their hit zone. The base of all figures on ladders are considered to be valid hit zones by all other figures. So again, when you're looking at a hit zone, that would be the red area on the army card on the right-hand side. Sorry about my finger, got ink on it from replacing an ink roller at work. So, back to our Zedian Guard and this Knight of Weston. The Knight of Weston is on the ladder. Therefore, the Zedian Guard can target the figure's base as a valid hit zone only while it's on this ladder. Target points. Figures on ladders may use the entire edge of their base as an alternate target point instead of their normal target point when using line of sight. So, going back to Sevarus, if he was up on the ladder, you again imagine it straight down. So Sevarus would be targeting Agent Carr. You can use the edge of his base as a target zone and a hit zone on Carr. So you can draw a straight line from base to base, thus Sevarus can shoot Carr. Here's some other ladder rules. The ladder will affect engagement rules as follows. Ladder may block line of sight when targeting a figure, and if 2 figures are completely separated by a ladder, they are considered neither adjacent nor engaged. So in this example here, Agent Carr is only adjacent to and engaged with the Shaolin monk in front of him, because the ladder separates Agent Carr from this Shaolin monk and Master Winshu Wu. Explosion special attack by the Deathwalker 9000. Let's see how that would work. So we add Deathwalker to this situation. The explosion special attack, which has a range of 7, attack 3, choose a figure to attack. Any figures adjacent to the chosen figure are also affected by the explosion attack. So, Deathwalker only needs a clear sight shot at the chosen figure. Roll 3 attack dice once for all affected figures. Each figure rolls defense dice separately. Deathwalker 9000 can be affected by his own explosion special attack. So standing here, the explosion special attack by Deathwalker 9000 on Master Winshu Wu does not affect Agent Carr because he is not adjacent. The ladder separates him, but it would affect this dude and this dude. Height advantage. Figures on a ladder may receive height advantage, which again, if the base of the figure is higher than the base of the targeted figure, roll an extra dice. That applies to both attack and defense. If the base of the figure is 10 levels or higher than the height of the targeted figure, you would roll 2 extra dice. And again, that applies to defense and attack. So, in this example, Sevarus has height advantage on the Shaolin monk on the ground, but not the Shaolin monk in the elevated terrain. So he adds 1 extra attack die when attacking this Shaolin monk. In this example here, the Shaolin monk has height advantage on 1 Zedian Guard. That would be this one. But not the other, because their bases are equal level. So, he adds 1 extra defense dice when defending against only the Zedian Guard on the ground. And the flag is actually pretty simple. The flag may be placed on the top of any battlement. It does not have any special powers unless specified in a scenario. So, you can just do this. Outside of the battlement, flag is placed, and Jandar's symbol flies proudly in the Valhallan winds. Those are the rules for the pieces added in the Fortress of the Archkyrie set. A little intimidating when you get to ladders, but all in all, it's just another element to add a little bit of variety to your Heroscape games. Now here's a little quiz that I was given off of Heroscapers.com. It is, what is the fewest number of turns for Finn, the Viking champion, to get from level 3 to level 8, using the fewest number of turns and moves? So, applying what we were taught with ladders, moving rung to rung, landing spaces, road tiles, etc., the answer would be 1. 1 movement. Using his movement of 5, you go 1 to this ladder, counting landing spaces, 2, 3, 4, 5.